Over 3 years ago, Kubo released a special one-shot chapter titled No Breeds from Hell. This was over 70 pages worth of new Bleach content, which is set 12 years following the events of the 1000-Year Blood War arc. The chapter centers around the Gotei 13 performing a burial ceremony for the late Captain Ukitake. Over the course of the chapter, several new pieces of information about the lore of Bleach are revealed, as well as establishing new pieces of mysterious foreshadowing which he has yet to elaborate upon. Despite the sheer amount of information that's revealed within this one-shot chapter, there are some people who believe that this was a standalone chapter with no possibility of a continuation. In this video, I'm going to be establishing why there are several clues that Kubo has laid within this chapter, which reveal that he's setting up for a much larger story which he has yet to tell us. I'll be going over everything from Kazui's strange ritual that he performs to open up a jaw of hell, to the shocking new information about the appearance of Szayelaporro, as well as the information that we learn about the true purpose of the Konso Reisai. Kubo also revealed some other key information during this one-shot chapter, like showing us the unseen Zanpakuto abilities of several Shinigami, as well as introducing concepts like beasts of hell and phosphoplasm. Now, you definitely want to stick around until the very end of the video, as I'll be talking about whether if Kazui is being manipulated by someone, or if he understands far more than what has been revealed to us, and what could be the link between the hell butterflies and the realm of hell. So without further delay, here is my video breaking down every single detail which you may have missed from the No Breeds from Hell one-shot chapter. We got really tired of the same old boring anime shirts, so we decided to launch GIGA.com with the aim of creating designs inspired by our favorite anime and manga. We came up with designs that look cool and represent all of our favorite stories. Check out the latest Instinct collection, which features some amazing designs like this Frosted Heavens design inspired by Toshiro Hitsugaya, or this Instinct design inspired by Hollow Ichigo, and my personal favorite, which is the Heart design, which was inspired by Ukiura Shifa. Do not miss out, go to Getsuga.com and wear your favorite stories. The one-shot chapter had begun with this mysterious tale about two goldfish. The narrator states that when they were younger they had two goldfish and they adored both of them, but one day the larger goldfish had passed away. The surviving smaller goldfish had appeared to be lonely, and this had made the narrator feel lonely too. But after the death of the larger one, the smaller fish had started to flourish and grow larger. Seeing this had made the narrator feel relief, and in the end they were glad that the larger fish had died. So this mysterious goldfish story may have some double meaning, as it definitely seems to symbolize these themes of sacrifice, growth, and balance. These themes could be linked to the Zanpakuto of Ukitake Sogyo no Kotowari, which translates to Law of the Twin Fish. Ukitake's Zanpakuto is a dual-bladed one, which is connected by a rope. We learn that the Shikai ability of Sogyo no Kotowari allows Ukitake to absorb an opponent's attack via the left sword. The attack then travels through the red rope as it passes through those 5 talismans, and these serve to increase the attack speed and pressure. Ukitake is then able to release the original attack, which is now being amplified via the right sword at full force towards its target. The story of the larger fish dying so that the smaller one could flourish mirrors this idea of balance which exists within Ukitake's Shikai ability. The balance between both of his blades is so precise that he is able to absorb and redirect attacks so fast that it seems as though the attack had originated from his Zanpakuto. Even comparing this goldfish story to the role that Ukitake plays within the Gotei 13, you can see the parallels that exist with his own personal sacrifice that he had done during the 1000-Year Blood War arc, where he had released Mimihagi and forfeited his life in order to prevent Yhwach from collapsing all of the 3 realms. This goldfish story may also be linked to the Konso Reisai ritual, which is revealed later in the chapter. The death of the larger fish parallels the deaths of Yamamoto, Ukitake, and Unohana. The Konso Reisai sacrifices captains who have dense spiritual pressure as it casts them to hell in order to maintain the balance of reality. So for one thing to flourish, something else must be sacrificed, which is the basic gist of this goldfish story. It's worth noting that during during the story, the narrator was initially also feeling lonely following the death of the larger fish, but after they had seen that the smaller fish was flourishing, they were then glad that the larger one had died. The story conveys a powerful metaphor for the themes of balance and sacrifice, and how death can lead to growth as well as balance. And this seems to heavily align with the story that is told within this one-shot chapter. So the chapter begins with the night sky of Karakura town, and funnily enough, we see a fish flying through the air. It appears to be a spiritual being, and when Kazui awakens and he transforms into his Shinigami state, he jumps out of his bedroom window and lands on one of the fish. A smaller fish then appears alongside the larger one that Kazui is riding. He may be using the fish in order to travel around Karakura town without his spiritual pressure being detected. Kazui relays a key detail to Kon before he jumps out of the window and rides on that fish. Kon tries to stop him from leaving, as he states that Kazui had gotten in trouble yesterday, as he tells him to stay put and sleep for today. But Kazui insists that he had made a promise to go again today. It seems like this promise was made to one of the wandering spirits within Karakura town. It seems like the two of them had met yesterday, as he clarifies to Kazui that he had told him yesterday that he is only 15 years old. But Kon is doubtful of this fact, and the guy does seem to be older than 15. So the spirit says that they are upset because they feel lonely, but Kazui reassures him that he's going to take him somewhere where he won't be lonely anymore. Kazui leads him to a shrine. Kazui reassures them that there is nothing to be scared about. Now if you pay attention here, he claps 3 times and he bows once, and this is followed by one more final clap. Now if you're looking at the manga panels, every action that he does creates an eyeball. These eyeball blobs burst out of thin air, so by the time Kazui does those 5 actions, those 5 eyeballs appear to transform into 5 hell butterflies. And those butterflies are floating in front of a jaw of hell which Kazui has just opened up. Kazui reassures both Kon and the soul, stating that it's in here and that everything will be fine because everyone is in here. This does make you wonder whether if Kazui has entered hell in the past. Is he being manipulated by someone? Kazui has definitely created one of these jaws of hell before, because when they had first arrived at the shrine, he had wondered whether if this is the first time that Kon is seeing it. I do wonder just who had taught Kazui how to open a jaw of hell from the world of the living. Some people think that Kazui's mysterious actions here may be linked to the Reiatsu of Yuhabag, which he had touched in chapter 686 of the manga. But again, it's another mystery that Kubo lays out within the story and is yet to reveal to us. Now these eyeball blobs that Kazui conjures by clapping, we see it within the eye socket of the skeleton that appears on the main gate of hell. This is where the gate of hell appears and opens up with Ukitake's oversized Zanpakuto piercing through Szayelaporro's chest, dragging him back into hell. So 3 hours before Kazui had opened up this jaw of hell, we cut to the Soul Society, and this is where Kubo reveals some additional information about the current goings on within the Soul Society 12 years following the events of the 1000-year Blood War arc. Kubo reveals that Renji and Rukia's daughter Ichika is being trained by Ikkaku. Via Ikkaku we learn that Ichika often goes on trips to the world of the living, where she hangs around with Ichigo's son. We then cut to a video call between Ichigo and Renji, and during this conversation we learn about this new concept that Kubo introduces called the Konso Reisai. Renji describes it as a ceremony that is done for captains who are lost in battle, and this ceremony is done 12 years after their funeral has been conducted. Apparently they had already done these rituals for both Unohana and Yamamoto, and now it's time to do a Konso Reisai for Ukitake. Renji explains that the ritual involves capturing a hollow within the world of the living and killing it in front of the grave of the captain. Again, things are kept very brief here, but we do learn more about the Konso Reisai at the end of the chapter. Kubo also reveals that the Soul Society has had a plethora of new innovations, like the Soul Pager which Renji is using to video call Ichigo. Rukia also reveals that they now have working TVs in the Soul Society so they can watch shows from the world of the living now. All of these innovations have come to the Soul Society following the events of the 1000-year Blood War arc, with Urahara now working closely with the Shinigami Research and Development Institute, as they've been creating all sorts of new devices made up of reishi. Seems like Mayuri is in competition with Urahara, as he explains that his inventions are more suited to the aesthetics of the Serete, as we see one of Mayuri's new creations which is this bug that is able to project out a hologram of him, allowing him to communicate with anyone. So before the Konso Reisai can be performed, a pre-ritual needs to be done, and this again involves the lieutenants of the Gotei 13 arriving within the world of the living as they capture a holo which is going to be purified in front of the grave of Ukitake for the Konso Reisai. During the chapter, Kubo reveals that the new captain of the 4th Division is Isane, and Iba is now the captain of the 7th Division, and his lieutenant is an all-new character who's revealed for the first time in this one-shot called Atao Rindo. Kubo also introduces us to the new lieutenant of the 8th Division called Yuyu Yayahara, and her captain is Lisa Yadomaru, who is taking over Shunsui, who of course is the new head captain. During the chapter, we are then introduced to Beasts of Hell, who are oversized hollows that originate from Hell. Each of them have a very different appearance, but they have some very common visual elements, like instead of possessing hollow holes over their chest, they have these large rings that protrude on the outside of their body, and they also have these huge chain patterns over their skin. Another key detail about them is that they do not have any spiritual pressure, leading Ikkaku to describe them as not being ordinary hollows. During the battle against these Beasts of Hell, we learn some new Zanpakuto abilities for several Shinigami. The first is the Zanpakuto of Atao Rindo. The release command of his Shikai is Give Birth. Because he isn't able to speak, he writes this with his finger over his sealed Zanpakuto, which activates his Shikai. His Zanpakuto then splits up into these segmented sections, with each one resembling a talisman. Atao can name different species of animals with sign language, and then the specific animal is then transformed from the different talisman sections of his blade. In the one-shot chapter, Atao says hawk as several hawks fly towards a beast of hell, completely stripping it of its flesh. We then see the Zanpakuto ability of Yayahara, as it's revealed that she prefers to keep her Zanpakuto in its Shikai state, and her Zanpakuto takes on the form of colored fingernails. Kubo confirmed this information about her Shikai in question 670 on his official fan club. In the one-shot chapter, she uses her fingernails to bite through one of the Beasts of Hell. Mayuri's lieutenant Akon is seen on the battlefield for the first time, and he seems to use an ability called Melt. He pours a vial of liquid into a larger pool of a different liquid, as he then recites a string of numbers, and Akon transforms the liquid into an extremely strong acid which melts one of the Beasts of Hell. Now this brings us to the appearance of Szayelaporro. Now if you pay attention, he emerges from one of the jaws of hell, and there is a hell butterfly floating alongside it. After spending several years in hell, Szayelaporro now has a very different appearance. Similar to the Beast of Hell, he has this chain pattern over his body. His entire left arm has been reduced to bone, and it appears to be covered in a black substance which may or may not be phosphoplasm. Phosphoplasm are these black blobs that you see floating around Szayelaporro. This is explained a bit later on in the chapter by Shunsui. So the Arrancar reveals to Renji that he was cast into hell, as he elaborates that hell is great. He explains that he was able to cast away his hollow hole, and his hole is no longer bound to his flesh, as we see this huge ring behind his shoulder, and it's similar to those protruding rings that those Beasts of Hell had. Hollow holes are formed when a soul's chain of fate slowly corrodes away. Szayelaporro states that both of his hate and suffering are like tears, explaining that they are overflowing out of his brain, as then these two horns appear at the side of his head. They seem to be dripping with blood. Szayelaporro reveals himself to be a jailer of hell, stating that he has clairvoyance, as he reveals the identity of Ichika without being told who she is. This hellish version of Szayelaporro is able to release these chains from his body, as they are fast enough to impale Renji's limbs as he tries to escape. When Ichigo appears, it's confirmed that his Zanpakuto is able to cut through these chains. This is important because in the Hellverse movie, this was a major plotline where the chains of hell in that movie were unable to be cut, hence why they needed Ichigo to fire a Sero from his Vasto Lorde form, which would be strong enough to break those chains. I said this to once again emphasize that Bleach Hellverse is not canon, and it's totally different to Kubo's vision of hell, which he will reveal to us in the continuation of this one-shot chapter. Towards the end of the chapter, we begin to be introduced to several new concepts, the first of which is phosphoplasm, which are these black blobs from hell which can be seen floating through the Soul Society around the grave of a deceased captain. This phosphoplasm appears while the Konso Reisai is performed. These black blobs also appear when individuals from hell show up in the world of the living. When Shunsui cuts through a phosphoplasm, it releases an acidic substance. Soifon even comments on how it is very different to Reishi as it isn't absorbing back into the air. Shunsui explains that it is phosphoplasm from hell. He then introduces us to a concept called spirit class. In the past, it was used as a scale amongst the high-level individuals in the Soul Society, as it was an indication of the density of the spiritual pressure within Reishi. Shunsui explains that a normal Shinigami within the Gotei 13 has a 20th class of Reishi. A lieutenant has a 4th or a 5th spirit or Reishi class, and when it comes to captains, they are a 3rd spirit class or higher. We know that a Shinigami's body is made up of Reishi, so when they pass on, their body turns into Reishi and is absorbed into the soil of the Soul Society. But anyone who has a 3rd spirit class or higher, their spiritual pressure is simply too dense to be reabsorbed into the Soul Society without an intervention. So apparently the Konso Reisai is a ceremony which allows this Reishi to be returned into the Soul Society. Now this is what was taught to them at the Shinigami Academy. Shunsui explains that there is an old wives' tale about the Konso Reisai which is spread across the Soul Society. This states that the Reishi that is 3rd class or higher can never return to the soil of the Soul Society. This is because it is too dense with spiritual pressure. Shunsui then adds that they cannot just allow this powerful Reishi to linger within the Soul Society indefinitely, as he then says that the true purpose of the Konso Reisai is a ceremony that sends the deceased captains into hell. Szayelaporro says to Ichigo that power always has a cost. The Shinigami who have lost the right to return to the Soul Society due to the power that they have obtained end up being cast into hell as a salvation. When Rukia questions whether if this is true, Shunsui states that it may well be, as he is only now realizing this to be true. This is because of the appearance of the phosphoplasm around the grave of Ukitake. Szayelaporro then introduces us to a new concept which is centered around a balance of spiritual pressure which needs to be maintained in order to keep the jaws of hell shut. He explains to Ichigo that the balance has collapsed. The powerful spiritual pressures that were holding the jaws of hell shut, like Aizen as well as Yuhobaku's, have all disappeared, and Yuhobaku, according to the Can't For Your Own World light novels, has been transformed into the Soul King. Ever since then, an imbalance has occurred as more and more individuals with powerful spiritual pressures are sent to hell one after another. Because of this, the jaws of hell can be opened now from the inside. What's interesting is that when Szayelaporro speaks about the imbalance of spiritual pressure, we see that goldfish from the very beginning of the chapter appear here, and it's just a singular fish. So the death of that larger fish earlier in the story symbolizes the removal of powerful spiritual pressures which were holding the jaws of hell shut. These were the spiritual pressures of Aizen, Yuhobaku, Yamamoto, Unohana, and now Ukitake. These are the larger fish which have essentially disappeared and have thus allowed the smaller fish, which is hell and its inhabitants, who can now flourish. As explained by Szayelaporro, who states that the jaws of hell can now be opened from the other side. It links back to the goldfish story that while it is tragic that the larger fish had died, its absence had allowed for the smaller fish to grow. Now while Szayelaporro is speaking, he is impaled through the chest as a gate of hell appears behind him. Now Szayelaporro, being aware that Ukitake was going to be sent to hell, appears to be another display of him demonstrating his clairvoyance, as he refers to Ukitake by his full name after he is impaled by his Zanpakuto. It seems as though the Konso Reisai was performed when the beasts of hell were slain in front of Ichigo's substitute Shinigami badge, which Szayelaporro explains had served as the eyes of Ukitake. Now around that gate of hell that has appeared behind Szayelaporro, there are several hell butterflies. As he leaves Ichigo with one final mystery, he tells him that hell has always been beside them, asking him has he ever wondered why the butterflies which guide the Shinigami through the Senkaimon have hell in their name. After Szayelaporro is dragged back into hell, the gates of hell shut, as we then zoom into one of the skulls of the skeleton on the gate of hell, and we see an eyeball blob appear within its eye socket. We then cut to the end of the chapter as we see that the title of the one-shot has been changed from No Breeds from Hell to New Breeds from Hell. This could be significant that the title No Breeds from Hell suggests that Hell was dormant at the beginning of the chapter, but with the imbalance of spiritual pressures, Hell has now awakened, thus prompting the change from no breeds to new breeds. From this video you can see just how many new concepts and mysterious elements that Kubo had introduced into the No Breeds from Hell one-shot chapter. It is truly fascinating just how much he was able to cram into these 70 pages, and it's been 3 years since we've had any new information about this storyline, which he has set up so incredibly well, but has done very little to nothing to expand upon it since. People are doubtful whether if we are going to be having a continuation of the Bleach manga. I honestly think that it is very likely. I don't think that Kubo would have introduced and set up all of these different elements if he wasn't planning on expanding upon it in the future. At the moment he's been really busy working as a supervisor for the Bleach 1000 Year Blood War arc anime, but as his work on Core 4 wraps up, I do think that he will be turning his attention back over to the manga, hopefully releasing a new installment which builds upon this story which he has introduced us to in this one-shot chapter that was released back in August of 2021. So we have reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What do you guys think about all of these new concepts and mysterious elements which Kubo introduced to us? What are your thoughts about the significance of this story of the goldfish that was revealed at the beginning of the chapter and how it links to the story of Bleach? What are your thoughts about the role of Kazui and him casually just opening up a portal to hell? What are your thoughts about the new information about the Shinigami and the current state of the Gote 13 that Kubo revealed to us? And what are your own theories about the significance of the hell butterflies and the information which Szayelaporro had revealed to us towards the end of the one-shot chapter? There is quite a lot to discuss, so definitely continue the discussion in the comments. If there's anything that I've forgotten to mention, then do let me know. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach Explained video.
A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.